Hey everyone, welcome back to Inglebard Gaming. Today I've got part 5 of my how to make Sega Genesis / Mega Drive music with Deflemask tutorial series. That's right, part 5. So if you missed the first 4 parts and the primer that preceded them, well, I strongly suggest checking those out before watching this video so you won't be lost. A lot of what I'm going to do today builds on concepts in those first 4 parts. I'll have the playlist for the whole series linked below and at the end of the video. To summarize though, in those episodes I explain the different sound chips in the Genesis, the basic interface of Deflemask, getting started with creating your own FM instruments, and working with samples. In today's episode, I'll be diving into the second sound chip in the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive, the SN76489. This is the same sound chip that was found in Sega's 8-bit line of consoles that started with the SG-1000 and ran through the Sega Master System. It was included in the Genesis for compatibility with Master System games, but Sega wisely also made it available during Genesis games as a secondary sound chip. The SN76489, from which I will now only refer to as the PSG, which stands for Programmable Sound Generator, was used in the SMS and Genesis and also found in several old computers and consoles. How old? Well, this is the same sound chip that was used in the ColecoVision, believe it or not. But you definitely should believe it because, it's true. Oh, and before we fully dive into this, I will let you know that normal retro gaming videos will resume next week. So before we learn how to use the PSG in Deflemask, we should talk about its capabilities real quick. This particular PSG has 4 sound channels. 3 of them produce square waves. One of them produces noise. Contrary to some popular opinions out there, you can use all 4 channels at the same time, but there are some sound modes that reduce the number of channels to 3, in which case you would have 2 square waves and 1 noise channel. Now square waves, if you don't know the name, sound like this. You've probably heard this instrument about 1,000,000 times in your life because lots of electronic sound devices produce square waves. Noise can play sound like this. And that's the limited range noise mode. Or if we go into full range noise mode, we can get something like this. There are also 2 types of noise available. White noise, which sounds like this, and periodic noise, which sounds like this. The range of the square wave tones is pretty limited and focused way more in the higher octaves. This is why so many Sega Master System games have really high-pitched instruments in their music. Its low tones stop very low in the first octave, or octave 1, which is why you don't hear anything that sounds like a deep bass in SMS games. And watch this to see what I mean. I'll pull up the piano here in Deflemask so you can get a visual on these notes as it plays them. They stop at around A0, and it's missing the rest of octave 0 after that. It just repeats notes over and over until they eventually just stop. And even then, they're not very low. So how can we use this limited sound chip from some of the earliest game consoles effectively in Genesis / Mega Drive game music? Well, the good news is, there are a few ways, and we should get right to that. If you listen to square waves, you can tell that they make an okay stand-in for a few different types of instruments. You might be able to get away with using a square wave channel or 2 to replace something like a clarinet, a flute, or even strings in a pinch. And no, I am not saying that they sound as good as FM or sampled instruments. They absolutely do not. But using a square wave or 2 to augment the FM channels in the Genesis's YM2612 can really help fill out a song and make it sound a little less empty. And now the noise channel is kind of its own special thing. If you enable the full range mode, you can use the highest frequencies as sort of shakers or hi-hats to go along with your rhythm track or tracks. Again, it's no substitute for samples or decent quality FM percussion, but in a support role, the hi-hats and shakers from the PSG can also really help fill out a rhythm track. And I'd say those are the primary uses of the PSG in Genesis / Mega Drive music. So how do we do that stuff? Great question. Watch and find out. Alright, so here's Deflemask. I'm using the current paid version from this point on in the tutorial series, but all this stuff works similarly in the free legacy version that anyone can download, and I'll have the link down below in the description. First up, let's identify the FM and PSG tracks. The first 6 channels here are FM. The 6th channel, if you remember from prior episodes, is the one that employs the DAC to play samples if you choose to use samples. These 6 channels are labeled FM1 through FM6. The last 4 channels we see here are for the PSG, and these are labeled SN1 through SN4. The first 3 channels are the square wave channels. The last one is the noise channel. So let's create an instrument in Deflemask. We want to set the type to STD. This tells Deflemask that it's an instrument for the PSG. Then we click in one of the PSG square wave tracks. And now we can enter notes as normal. So I'm going to toss a few notes in here. Feel free to follow along and pause as necessary if you want. Now let's talk about note volume. Whereas the FM channels have a huge range of volumes, the PSG channels do not. The volume in the PSG channels ranges from 0 through F, so in hex, that's 16 possible volume levels. Also, the volume drops off tremendously after about halfway down, so watch what happens when I set these volumes to progressively decrease by 1 level. Did you hear that? For melodic instruments, you'll probably find the PSG most useful at volumes between about 7 and C. You can set it however you want, but in general I find that to be the most useful range. And there are a few things here that are different in the PSG section from the FM section also. So there's some stuff we can do here to help vary up those boring square waves a bit. We can sort of set a volume profile to create a fade, pulse, or vibrato effect right here. You just draw it right on in. And you can hit the plus signs to increase the length of the effect. Here's an example of what making a curvy instrument sounds like. Now let's play that same section again with an instrument that's just flat, or level I should say. And by the way, Deflemask will default PSG instruments to a level sound at maximum volume. Pretty big difference there, right? Now we can create some other simple effects with volume that can vary up the instrument a bit. For example, if I take the volume macro and make it really short, we can get this quick little hit that can be kinda nice. Or we can make a long instrument where it fades in and out like this. Doing stuff like that can be a good way to simulate some stringed instruments. You can also manually vary volume like this. That simulates a vibration which has no serious computational or memory cost. And here's what it sounds like. Let's speed up playback a bit to hear this technique being a little more effective. And there's one more major thing to look at here, and that's the arpeggio macros. You can use these to vary up the sound in a few other ways. A lot of European computer and 8-bit console games use this feature or one similar to it for other hardware extensively. We can manually set where the tone played rises or falls, just like this. And just like with volume, we can change the length of the effect by clicking the plus and minus signs. We can also vary it by clicking this option here. Now, I can't give you a ton of advice on how to make an arpeggio macro sound good. I find it's one of those things that you just have to play around with and see what sounds good to you when it's accompanying the other instruments in your particular song. It's easy to go overboard with arpeggio macros, so you'll really need to spend time with them and make them as subtle as you can to get the best results when mixing them with Genesis FM channels and the DAC. So all this stuff I just covered with you is how you handle the PSG in channels 1, 2, and 3. So now, let's make some noise. The noise channel is special in that it has two different options with two choices each. First, let's talk about noise type. There's white noise and periodic noise, as I talked about earlier. You have to tell Deflemask which noise type you're using by setting an effect. The effect to set the noise type is 20. Then the parameters for the effect are in XY format, meaning each digit of the parameters does something different. The first digit sets the range. 0 is limited range noise mode, which limits you to 3 tones for noise. C, C sharp, and D. You only get them in one octave, so no matter which octave you play, they will play at the same pitch. If we set the first digit to 1, we get full range noise mode. Now when we use parameter 0, that's when we can use all 3 square wave channels with the noise channel. So we have a total of 4 PSG channels active at any one time. If we change the parameter to 1, however, that's when we can only use the first 2 square wave channels and the noise channel. Now the second parameter is for the noise type. 0 is for periodic noise. 1 is for white noise. So if I want full range periodic noise, I would set the effect as 210. Let's play the noise track and see what it sounds like. Now let's hear what it sounds like if I change the noise range to limited with effect 200. Pretty big difference, huh? Let's switch to white noise, which is more common. I'll leave it in the limited range for now, so the effect will be 2001. And you know what, let's speed that up a bit. Hey, now it's starting to kind of sound like real Master System music, right? Let's change that to full range with effect 211 and see what it sounds like. Oh, and one more thing. Let's make this the highest note possible, which is C8. Let's make that sound even shorter. I'll edit the volume macro this time and turn off the arpeggio. That sounds a little more hi-hat-like, doesn't it? Let's make it even shorter. Oh, that's too short. Let's make it a smidge longer and try one more time. Well, that sounds pretty rhythmy to me. How about you? So one last thing here. So if you're just using the keyboard to play the instruments, you won't hear a change in noise mode until you press play in Deflemask and it reaches the tick with the effect in it to set the noise mode. So if you're in periodic, but you set, the effect to change it to white noise, you won't hear it if you're just pressing the keys. You have to hit play in Deflemask, have it reach and pass that effect, and then stop it, and then you'll hear it when you press the keys. Just a quirk in how it works, and this is mentioned in the manual. Okay, let's make a quick little song using only the Master System PSG. I decided on doing a few patterns from Phantasy Star 3's main theme song because, well, why not? I'll slowly show you each pattern. You can pause it and copy the notes if you want. Okay, now let's play it and see what we've got here. Not too bad, huh? One thing that I didn't mention, but I did throw in, was an effect. Some effects work on these PSG channels and some do not. In this case, I used the vibrato effect, which is 04, and I use parameters 4 and 4, so the whole effect reads 0444. This gives us sort of a slow, leisurely vibrato that works okay for a flute-like sound. Keep in mind that using this effect will result in your VGM file taking up more storage space because each register write changes the size of the resultant file and makes it larger. It's much more efficient to use a manual effect like adjusting the volume, but this just sounds better. Oh, and as you probably figured out, in this song I'm using the limited range percussion to get the 3 square wave tracks to play simultaneously. But let's change things up a bit. Let's say I don't want to use just the Master System chip, but I'm okay with moving some things over to the Genesis FM chip. Let's take that bass part in SN3. It doesn't sound very bassy, so let's move that one over to FM and use a bass instrument. And I'll also change the noise mode to full range since I've got an extra PSG channel now. And I'll switch up that rhythm track just a smidge. I'll make the notes higher and alter some octaves to show you the range difference. Oh, and you can use any bass instrument that comes with either the free or paid versions of Deflemask. You don't have to try to use the one that I used here, which is one that I made. Let's see how this thing sounds now after I've made those changes. Not bad. Let's make it a little more Genesis-y. Is that a word? Well, it is now. I'm going to move the low tone track in SN2 to an FM synth string-like instrument. And I'll change the octave for the FM channel also. Now let's hear it real quick. Well, that sounds pretty neat, I think. And again, you don't have to use my instrument, which you won't have. You can use any instrument that you like for the part. But now, we've got this extra PSG channel burning a hole in our proverbial pockets, right? What can we throw into that PSG channel? How about a quick little arpeggio? Let's try this one out. And let's throw in one more new FM track. I'll use a high vibraphone for this one. And you know what? I'm going to put in some stereo FM flutes that just repeat the main melody from the SN1 track in a higher FM octave, and I'm going to use sort of that echo effect that we've used in prior videos. Now that we've got all that stuff in there, let's try this out. That's not too bad, again, for something I just threw together spur of the moment for this video. I had not planned to do this song, I had just started playing it and thought, hey, it would be neat to include something that people might know in this video. So excuse the accuracy or lack thereof in this, it's not what I was going for. I really just wanted to show you what you could do with the combination of FM and PSG sounds. Okay, so we've pretty much come to the end of the episode here, I think. I mean, there's more I could show you on making PSG music, but really when it comes to beginner level SMS music, this little tutorial gives you way more than you need already. Anything else would be overkill right now. Just using the techniques that you've seen here in this video will allow you to make some really nice accompaniment for your FM tracks in Genesis music. And it also teaches you enough to make decent SMS only tracks if you're working on Sega Master System games. Now the key to using the PSG successfully in Genesis/Mega Drive music is figuring out how it works best for the individual song that you're creating. If you're doing a cover from real music or from another game system with a more advanced sound chip, you'll really need to determine which instrument or instruments you're going to use the PSG for. And my best advice for that is to figure out which tracks and instruments are critical, the ones that really stand out, or that use instruments that really need to sound a specific way in FM or even in a DAC. Dial those in first. Then move whatever absolutely doesn't need to be FM over to the PSG tracks. And hey, if you don't need the noise channel, use all 3 PSG tracks if you want. You can even make chords out of them. If rhythm is more important than melody for the song you're working on, use a full range noise channel on the PSG, and then still up to 2 square wave tracks. There's a lot you can do with this, and it might seem a smidge daunting at first, but you really need to experiment with it and figure out on a song-by-song basis how to best use the secondary sound chip. Now the next episode of this tutorial series we'll focus on using everything we learned in the first 5 episodes and applying all that knowledge to create a single song, or at least a song fragment, that uses all of that stuff. So that means the FM channels, the DAC, the PSG, its noise channel, and also applying various effects. I'll throw in looping and talk about how to best make effective loops, and in that video I'll probably get it out by late November. I'll run through things kinda quickly in that one, since I covered a lot of that stuff in depth already. And I don't think anyone wants about a 90-minute video where I go over everything in excruciating detail. My goal is to keep this one in the 30 to 40 minute range and show you everything that's important and how it all works together. So what do you think? Did you like this video? Did you have any questions on it? Is there anything I didn't cover about the PSG that you want to know about? Go ahead and let me know in the comments. And that'll do it for this video, my retro gaming and retro music loving friends. I hope you got something out of this video and the rest of this series. If you enjoyed it, please like and share it online somewhere. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if you're so inclined, you can support the work I do here either on Patreon or Ko-fi. The links are in the description and also at the end of this video. With that, I'll say thanks for watching and see me later.